Okay, it is time for our second vendor in this Snake Oilers edition. The company is InQuest, and the speaker is InQuest's very own Pedram Amini. Now, this is an interesting tech. InQuest makes a box that Pedram says is used by the type of organizations that have 3 of everything. This technology began life at the Pentagon, and it's a really interesting way of detecting client-side attacks, but over the network. You can deploy it a few different ways. You can feed it raw packets behind your SSL terminator or plumb it in with ICAP. So there's multiple ways of getting data to this machine, but the idea here is that it will take the raw data and reassemble it into files. After reassembling these files, the InQuest tech breaks them down to analyze them. Modern-day malware is commonly nested in multiple levels of compression, embedded in complex PDF object streams, or buried within jar files. If your network monitoring infrastructure can't decode multiple nested levels, then most advanced malware is likely getting through to your end users, or at least to your endpoints, and then do you really want to rely on your endpoint detections to pick it up? The InQuest kit can also feed these files off to multiple AV scanners or even cloud services, so it's a tool for serious SOCs. It's not a primary control, rather it's designed to fill in some significant gaps really, really nicely. So yeah, InQuest does what they call deep file inspection on top of deep session or packet inspection. The whole idea is to augment client-side host-based and network-based controls, and it's for SOC teams who want to augment their detection and prevention capabilities and use something like this for threat hunting. Pedram Amini joined me to talk about InQuest, and here's what he had to say.
In a typical types of attacks that we're dealing with, and we've been looking at this problem for a long time, Space. Like we've seen the common malware carrier issue being client-side attacks. This is the last place where vulnerability is going to die. So your browser-based attacks, your file-based attacks, like your Adobe documents, Office documents, your jar files, your Swift applets. So since maybe back in 2010, this is a problem that we've seen as network operators and some of that we've put our focus on. And so that's really where the product shines. Is you give us these atomic packets, and then we're going to give you a very high-level picture of what you have going on at layer 7, including what's inside those files.
Well, and that's why you say layer 7 and beyond, right? Which is a nice little marketing tag, but it's kind of, I'll allow it because it's true. I mean, you're doing stuff like you're like decompiling flash files and pulling apart jars and like really looking at what's in them, right?
That's correct. So, whatever I refer this to as like encapsulation or your Matryoshka doll. And it's an arbitrary nesting. I've seen real world malware campaign samples where a zip file is being sent in an email, and that zip file is password protected. The password is written in an obfuscated fashion in the email body. Once you open that, you've got a document. You double click on that document. Inside there's another document. Whereas before in the past, this kind of like level of user interaction was frowned upon by malicious actors. Now, with the advent of all the myriad of automated tools out there, actually layering your attack in such a fashion where it's going to take some severe or significant human interaction to get it to open is a viable option for attackers. So we'll go through all that steps. Right? We will decrypt that zip file based on the contents of the email, and then we'll take that document and pull out the document inside there. And if there's a flash applet, we'll decompile that. If there's a macro, we'll decompress, deobfuscate, and expose that there as well. So in essence, this, as we call it, deep file inspection layer, is taking your deep packet inspection, deep section inspection, and throwing another marketing term on top of it, deep file inspection, to get at the core guts of what's in these files. And we automate all that so that the SOC analyst can worry about writing, threat intel signatures without having to deal with the nuances of this, myriad of encapsulation techniques that can be employed by attackers.
So I'm guessing your team has spent, most of its life writing parsers for this thing, right?
It's an ongoing and ever-changing workflow. Yes, it's a big part of what we do. I'd say that our capabilities are split into our ability to do data capture without packet loss, and then our ability to expose the content and provide visibility on top of it, and then finally our third pillar is the threat intelligence. And we're not just looking for specific types of malware. Our rules are designed to be generic, and they pair and heat and cool when they're seen together, so that we're essentially building up a picture the same way that a SOC analyst would when he's looking at all these different indicators underneath a single pane of glass. We show everything and we automate what we can in order to reduce the amount of time, reduce alert fatigue, and allow the SOC analyst to do what he does best, applying human cognition where it matters.
Now, of course, you're not pitching this as, you are pitching this as a mechanism for detecting client-side attacks, file-based attacks, whether they're coming in through web or email or whatever, right? But you're not pitching this as an alternative to client-side protections that actually run on the host, like AV, EDR, whatever. This is for people who are already doing that, right?
That's correct. I mean, and in general, as a security practitioner, unless you're just a full-blown marketing type background, it's just a foolish thing to say. I mean, there's a long-standing necessity for defense in depth, and in some of these higher, echelon, more sensitive environments, they're essentially doing everything in triplicate. You throw 3 of everything at the problem. This is a commonality that we use as well. Like, we throw everything in the kitchen sink at the problem of detecting malicious content. We're not a replacement for endpoint. We augment endpoint. From our perspective, it's important to look at things from all angles. You're looking at, server logs that are aggregated. You're looking at endpoint heuristics that are coming together. You're looking at network-based things, everything combined to provide a full picture.
Now, of course, detection is just one part of this. You find that your customers really use this as a threat hunting solution, in a pretty major way, right?
Yeah, that's correct. We touch on 3 pillars: prevention, detection, and threat hunting. And potentially, and arguably, the threat hunting is among the bigger facets of what we offer. For anybody who's familiar with the VirusTotal's intelligence services, which any vendor that has been on your podcast that has dealt with malware will be familiar, we're providing that kind of service for our customers on premise. So we take all these files that we're capturing and the dissection that we do, and regardless of good or bad, we store them and we allow the user to use Yara-compatible signatures to hunt across this corpus of content. In many cases, pivoting and writing new signatures that will find otherwise unforeseen attacks. So, prevent what you can, detect what you can, but then provide the data platform to discover truly the most interesting breaches, which is what you get when you filter out all the other white noise.
Now, of course, one of the features of this thing that I like is that you could actually start carving off these files and sending them to like multiple scanners, right? And that's something your endpoint, software can't do. You're going to have one AV agent, not, 10 engines. And, being able to take stuff off the wire and throw it at like 10 engines if you want to, that's something you can do, right?
That's correct. We, in addition to the data capture and then this artifact extraction, where artifacts are, domains, URLs, email addresses, IP addresses, and predominantly and most importantly, files, we have implemented somewhat of a security MapReduce. Once we've extracted these artifacts, they in parallel go out to all of the onboard components. So our deep file inspection, our machine learning layers, our signature scanning engine, and then any optional integrations as well. So as an example, if you have an OpSWAT appliance on premise, OpSWAT is a multi-AV provider similar to VirusTotal, but it's in a box on your own network, so you don't have to worry about sending sensitive content up to the cloud. We can communicate with the OpSWAT box. If you have a VirusTotal API key, we can send hashes up there. If you have a sandboxing environment such as Cuckoo, Joe, VMray, FireEye, now also Falcon, the VX Stream has been purchased by CrowdStrike. We support all those as well, and each collector can connect to multiple of these things. And you can use things like MIME rules and host rules to send different things to different endpoints. And in the end, the map, this is the mapping it out. The reduced portion of it is we'll ingest all those results automatically and intelligently.
Yeah, okay, ingesting is one thing, and you talk about single pane of glass, and that is the marketing catch cry of 2018, let me tell you. But I mean, is it the case that you're actually looking at an InQuest console for this, or are you feeding back into SIEM?
So we actually, all these tools can be wrapped up underneath us. We will feed all the alerts to a SIEM after we've processed it. And the reason for that is because we can apply filtering and logic on top of it. I've been looking at the results of multi-AV for 20 years. So I can tell you right off the bat, like half the AV engines are going to be weighted down to 0. For the remaining ones, we have all sorts of nuances for name-based weighting and name-based elimination. So we want to provide a layer, just like the SOC analyst does, to reduce this kind of alert fatigue, right?
But I guess what I'm asking is, are you a console or are you an API?
We are a console. We will consume. So as an example, if you have your OpSWAT integration, that box would sit side by side to ours, and all the results that went through it would be seen through our eyes only, if that makes sense.
You're actually presenting this data to users in your own interface.
That's correct. So when you, At the end of the day, when a SOC analyst logs into our manager appliance or our manager instance and is searching for network sessions of interest, when they're looking at the session details pane, what they're going to see is a threat score from 0 to 10, and then they're going to see, and this is somewhat unique to us, the threat receipt. We have something like 15 or 16 contributors. Some of them are third party, like OpSWAT multi-AV, VirusTotal multi-AV, Sandbox results. The other ones are on-premise, so things like our own reputation, our scanning engine, our heuristics engine, our machine learning engine. And so the analyst will actually be able to see right at a quick glance, okay, this is an 8 out of 10, and the reason for it is because of the 15 subsystems that we have. 12 of them had some value to add. These 3 were not factored into the threat score because we don't want to artificially inflate scores. Just because everybody thinks something is bad just means it's garden variety. Doesn't mean that it's a 10. So that's part of the trick there as well is an intelligent threat scoring algorithm that takes into consideration, like SOC experience.
And I'd imagine you can take this information, if people want to ignore your interface and just pump it into whatever else they're using, they can do that as well?
That's absolutely correct. In all the environments that we're in, a SIEM is going to be the primary pivot point. So our alerts that we produce based off of what we see, what we capture, what we analyze, and any of the integrations that we work with, we'll encapsulate that all down into an alert stream that goes into the SIEM so that it can be aggregated with other events from your endpoint or from other devices. And then typically what will end up happening is the person will pivot into our box and start working from there.
Dive into it a bit further, right? That makes total sense. Now, look, you've described a technology here where you're talking about environments that have 3 of everything. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that means defense.
The original inception of this product actually came out of the Pentagon. So my partner and initial company founder, he ran the PentCert that's the Pentagon Computer Incident Response Team, for almost 20 years. Their mission was secure pipe. The Pentagon is the largest physical office in the world. It's arguably the one of the highest asset values in terms of the kind of threats that you're going to see there. And their job was to provide a secure pipe. So as part of that mission, they put together a collection of both commercial off-the-shelf tools, open source tools, and despite all the time and tuning and manpower, there was still something left to be desired in by way of visibility. Back in even 2010, when we saw how the malware carriers, the common client-side malware carrier, was really going to be the continued point of success for malicious actors. Without this deep file inspection engine, it's very, very difficult from a network perspective to get visibility into these things. Today, we're in a couple dozen sites worldwide. The Department of Defense, through DISA, made this initiative known as the Joint Regional Security Stack, where they essentially went to Army, Navy, Air Force, IC, everybody, and they're like, we need to get together and come up with a single common stack so that we can trade tools, techniques, people, procedures, everything across it. And so this Joint Regional Security Stack is now the backbone for defense for all these agencies globally, CONUS, OCONUS, all over the planet. So our devices, are deployed alongside other vendors in this stack. We're looking at over 2 terabit of data a second across the entire Department of Defense. So really, it's a big facet of what we do. A big point of our pride in defending those networks.
All right, Pedram Amini, thank you very much for joining us to talk about the technology you make over there at InQuest. It's very interesting stuff.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
That was Pedram Amini there from InQuest, and you can check them out at inquest.net. And I thoroughly enjoyed that conversation.